Welcome back to Viewpoint. I'm Jim Zogby. The Iowa Caucuses, the first step in the U.S. presidential nominating process, are less than 2 weeks away.
I lost.
For an update on how the GOP candidates are faring there.
Yeah, he started talking.
I want to welcome
on the radio
Ann
or
Selzer,
TV, and then
who joins us by phone from Iowa.
Right.
She's president of the Selzer and Company Group and director of Des Moines Register's Iowa poll. She's been conducting polls for over 2 decades. In 2008, she was the only pollster to predict a big caucus victory for Barack Obama, who won the caucus by 8 points. Ann, thanks for joining us.
it's always a pleasure.
We talked in 2008, and I'm so glad to have you back again. This is a different year in Iowa. It's a year where you have just a contest on one side, but you're still getting a lot of attention from the candidates, but not as much as normally so. Does it feel like an off year there?
It feels definitely like an off year, and it is just now starting to feel sort of like we normally think about caucus time, which is the candidates around a lot, some events, going on all the time, a lot of things sort of changing up the game. Normally, that sort of is status quo, and it has been a lot quieter. A lot less economic development for the state, a lot less enthusiasm, I think. When you have candidates here, it's just a different thing.
I've noticed the advertising monies spent are fairly low, comparatively speaking. Ron Paul's put in a lot, Rick Perry's put in a lot, but most of the other candidates have been shy to spend money in Iowa. Do Iowans, are you feeling slighted?
Well, I don't know if we're feeling slighted. I mean, there certainly now is PAC money coming in, and there's a lot of advertising now by third parties as well as the candidates. So the second half of December will probably make up for a lot of advertising we didn't have before. But it's really only in the kind of final 2 weeks run-up to the caucuses.
I also want to put up a chart on the screen, which you can't see, but I'm sure you know it by heart, and that's the number of visits that candidates have made. Michelle Bachmann and Rick Santorum have been there in the hundreds of times, but Ron Paul and Rick Perry, Newt Gingrich, much less so. I mean, given the role that Iowa usually plays, but they're all going to be crisscrossing the state. The one I want to ask you about is John Huntsman and then Mitt Romney, of course, both of whom avoided the state. Romney's taking it a little more seriously now, but Huntsman stayed away. Was that a big mistake for them?
Well, I have separate answers for both of them. With Huntsman, he announced in May, I think, that he wasn't going to play in Iowa because he didn't favor ethanol subsidies, and he didn't think that would be politically smart. And I said, okay, well, let's poll that. And our next poll that came out in June basically said opposition to ethanol subsidies is far from a deal killer for caucus-going Republicans here in Iowa. So, he miscalculated that. I think he thought he would have a hard time in Iowa, better fit for him in New Hampshire, and that he was going to have to choose. You skip Iowa at your peril. And I don't know if Huntsman could have won. I think there probably was a way he could have, but it would have been certainly a tough road. For Romney, my take is that he's been playing Iowa to be a no-lose proposition for him. That is, he sort of didn't spend a lot of time in the state. He looked like he wasn't spending money in the state. It looked like he didn't have much of an organization in the state. I think there's been a stealth organization, and that you're now seeing these endorsements roll out with very high-profile people. You're seeing some office action going on. You're seeing him kind of really make a play without appearing to make a play. So if he doesn't win, well, that was never expected, so that he doesn't lose. And if he does win, oh my heavens, that will appear to be a huge news story.
The one thing about Iowa that is intriguing in the year where only one party is having a competitive caucus situation is that the field is open then for independents and even Democrats. If they want to caucus as a Republican, they can. Yeah. So let me put up on the screen, the normal situation is to see Iowa as born again and very conservative. Let me put on the screen a chart that we have that shows the breakout of Republicans 88% very conservative and 11% liberal and moderate. 60% considered evangelical, only 40% non-evangelical. But they're not the only folks who are going to be voting in this caucus. Now,
are those the entrance polls from 2008?
That's what I guess, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
and that was because what you had on the Democratic side was a very competitive race where people were flooding the other way for the Hillary Obama contest. But this time, there's only one show in town. So are you expecting a different kind of caucus, group caucusing in Iowa?
Well, I don't know that the people will be all that much different. We'll see about that. But certainly, Iowa is a different place. The United States is a different place from 2008. I don't know if you've noticed, but we had a major recession. Mm-hmm. And so the issues that are dominating caucus goers and how they're evaluating candidates by far are the economy, how to create jobs, how to reform taxes. Those fiscal issues far overshadow the social issues. Of course, there is a group who are interested in social issues, but the interesting dynamic is, people took a look at 2008 and said, oh, if Mike Huckabee can win, I could be the next Mike Huckabee. And I think we have some people in the race this time who wouldn't be here except for that. And just having the social issues, having those bona fides, it's not enough this time around. You have to have a strong economic platform.
Or going back to 72, I could be the next Jimmy Carter.
Exactly.
Who literally got born in Iowa. His campaign took off after that. And that's the question I want to ask you. How many people are going to go to caucus in Iowa? And if you would, for those in the rest of the country and in the world who say, what is this Iowa all about? Make the case, if you. I've been going to Iowa for over 30 years and love the caucus process, but there are folks who either don't understand it or resent Iowa being first in the game. Make the case, and how many people are actually going to do it?
Well, all I can tell you is how many showed up in 2008, and that was about 119,000 on the Republican side. That's out of over 2 million registered voters. So it is a low incidence event, to be sure. Mm-hmm. You have to show up on a particular night at a particular time, and you need to have a couple of hours that you can spend to do it. So it's a different kind of thing from a primary. Now, when people say, why Iowa, my first answer is to say, for sure, Iowa is the worst place you could possibly start this process, except for all the other places. So, to the extent that we know how to do it and can do the mechanics of it efficiently, that we have an electorate who tunes in and pays attention and goes to events, a large percentage, and by that I mean for anywhere from 25 to 35%, have seen candidates in person. You can't do that in California. You can't do that in New York. You can't do that in Virginia. You'd be hard-pressed to do it in Nebraska. It's just a big state. So it's kind of the right size, the right sort of combination of things, and it's an accident of history. So there you have it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I like about Iowa and New Hampshire is just that. I look at you guys as you're the interlocutors for the rest of us. We don't get to do it. We only see the ads or the rallies of 10,000 people. By the time they leave Iowa, they're in the big time. Right. But you guys get to see them in garden parties and in living rooms.
And pizza ranches. That seems to be a real favorite.
And I must say, in some pretty grimy hamburger joints, but that'll get me in trouble the next time I go to Iowa. Talk to me about the following. I saw your poll. I'm going to put it up, the end of November poll. You had Gingrich in the lead, as did most folks. Gingrich at 25, Paul at 18, and Romney at 16, with everybody else kind of bunched together in the 8s and 6s. I've seen some polls recently showing a Ron Paul climb and even a Rick Santorum climb. I know your next poll doesn't come out until just after the first of the year, right before the caucus. Are you expecting movement here, and what kind of movement? I don't want you to preempt your own poll, but where will the surprises be? Where do you expect there might be some surprises?
Well, I have no new data from which to speak, so I just want to be perfectly clear. I guess as I handicap the races that's gone so far, if you take a look at Ron Paul's numbers, he's the only candidate who has marched consistently upward. So our first poll in June was at 7%. Our next poll on October 12th, this poll at 18%. So he appears to be bringing in first-time caucus goers, new people into the fold. He's been out of the media spotlight until, I think, today, in terms of people really teeing him up for taking a critical look. So, there are some iffy things. He certainly has a strong organization in the state, probably the strongest of any candidate, in terms of just the foot soldiers to identify the supporters and get them to their proper caucus site on the appointed night. Rick Santorum, as you mentioned, he spent many, many days in the state. He's hosted many events. He's been to all 99 counties. I think Michelle Bachmann is trying to make that happen now. But he appears not to get any traction. His numbers have basically not moved. He started in June at 4%. He's at 6% now. Now, you might say that's a 50% increase. When you have a small number, it's easy to have a big increase. But something's got to happen for him. He got some important endorsements this week. I don't know if that's enough, but, he is certainly someone to take a look at. Michelle Bachmann, who once was the darling of our first Iowa poll in June, she's doing a sort of wall-to-wall coverage of Iowa, planning in 10 days to go to all 99 counties. Her events just aren't attracting that many people. So she gets dozens of people. Ron Paul gets hundreds of people. So I think, you just kind of look at those elements and you kind of think, Ron Paul, unless something is to happen in the news media, something could happen there. Newt Gingrich is just being battered in the media and on the advertising that's airing here, and he has very little organization. He had nobody kind of working to get precinct captains in place and all of those things that sort of go along with doing well at a caucus. So I think his high standing now, I wouldn't be surprised if it moved. And I already mentioned Romney, that there's been this stealth organization in place.
Organization ultimately matters in Iowa. And Ron Paul, you say, has the best.
Ron Paul, and according to our own polling, his campaign has touched more likely caucus goers than any other candidate. So it's very aggressive in terms of identifying people who are going to caucus, and then you have the ability to keep persuading them, keep showing your stuff, keep making your case over and over and over again. He's got the people in place. You need to identify. You need to know the names and phone numbers of the people who say they're going to support you, so you can make sure they have a ride to get to caucus night, or if it's inclement weather, that someone will come and help them actually show up.
The normal role that Iowa plays is not to pick the winner, but to winnow out the losers.
It certainly does the latter. Occasionally we pick a winner. We picked Obama on the Democratic side. There's a little bit more of a history of success on the Democratic side in Iowa than the Republican.
But in terms of winnowing out the losers, who has to get a first or second place finish in Iowa just to stay in? Because as we've seen, the money is in the PACs. It's not in the candidates. Romney's got it. Perry had it. I don't know if it's still coming in. Ron Paul continues to draw. But who needs a first or second place in Iowa to stay in? Because otherwise, when we get to that debate in New Hampshire, the first one there, we could have a pretty small group left on stage. Who might leave if they don't get into first or second place?
Well, the debates have changed all of that. I think Tim Pawlenty was sorry he got out too soon, because he may have benefited from greater exposure in the debates. And so long as you don't have to have much of an organization to poll well enough to be included in the debate, there's no reason really to get out.
Okay.
I don't know that Michelle Bachmann has spent much time in New Hampshire. I don't know that Rick Perry has done much in New Hampshire. I don't know that Rick Santorum has either. So if anybody was going to get out, it's among those three. I would think.
Thank you.
Unless they make a phenomenal
Thank
showing.
you, Ann. We're looking forward to the Iowa poll when it comes out in the beginning of January. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
That's all the time we've got now. For more information, you can follow us on Twitter at AAIUSA or log on to our website at aaiusa.org. Thanks for watching. I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I'll see you next week before the new year on Viewpoint, our last Viewpoint of the year.